Hello, folks. Welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast, part of the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and we have a lot to discuss in this episode. What a great weekend for the Chicago White Sox as they travel down to St. Petersburg, Florida, to take on the Tampa Bay Rays, who have the best record in the American League, the best team playing at home this season, and the White Sox won 2 out of 3 in pretty convincing fashion. They only allow 3 runs this weekend. A terrific series for the White Sox that we'll be recapping later in the show, as Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan will be joining me from Tampa to share what was working on the pitching side and maybe a blueprint for the White Sox offense to find some success in the postseason. But of course, the biggest news over the weekend for the White Sox and going up to the trade deadline tomorrow on a Monday at 5 p.m. Central Time is who will the White Sox add to their roster? And they've already added a starting pitcher. Of course, with the trade, the Seattle Mariners right-handed starting pitcher Luis Castillo, we have learned when he'll be making his first start with the White Sox. But before that news, Chicago White Sox general manager Chris Getz spoke to the media and explained his rationale in why they targeted Luis Castillo.
You know, this was an opportunity to bring in a starting pitcher that, we're really excited about. Someone that, can help lead this young pitching staff, not only cover innings, but, has experience pitching in the playoffs. And if you look at, our club, we're at the bottom of the league in regards to starting pitching innings. And so, to be able to insert someone that pitches as regularly, posts as often as Luis Castillo, has the credibility into this group. We felt like is going to make a meaningful step in the right direction. Now, the fun part about this part of the season when you're looking at acquisitions, you can plug it into a projection system and playoff probabilities. And as you're, inputting different possibilities and potential acquisitions out there and understanding what the acquisition cost is going to be, this took a meaningful jump.
Looking at the latest public models that we have from Fangraphs.com, Fangraphs have the White Sox giving them a 56% chance of making the postseason. And when you take a look at winning the American League Central, the Chicago White Sox now have the best odds. They have leaped ahead of the Cleveland Guardians, and Fangraphs is giving the White Sox a 42% chance of winning the American League Central. But in order for the best possible outcome for the White Sox with this trade of Luis Castillo, obviously not just for 2026, but beyond, maybe they get lucky and 2027 is a great season for Luis Castillo, and that vesting option picks up because of the quality of innings that he's given the White Sox next season. In order for that to happen, though, Luis Castillo needs to make some adjustments. And Chris Getz is pretty confident the White Sox can help him using the case study of what we've seen this year from Jordan Hicks.
Luis was in piggyback roles. He was, coming out of the bullpen and then, being cut short at times. And, I think that really did have, I don't know if he would admit it, but I think anyone, that's been tracking it closely and knowing how, starters are such creatures of habit and are such competitors, especially someone like Luis Castillo, that probably did have an effect on him. To what extent, I don't really know, other than the fact that when they gave him a clean starting role in that rotation, I think it was right around mid-June. Since then, I mean, it's a sub 4, it's a 3, it's in the 3 ERA level. So the production is there. The stuff grades that we have, execution, all of that, just the adjusted kind of ERA, but also just what we believe is still in there. And sure, I think that there's going to be opportunity to perhaps tweak an arsenal or something with the delivery. And I look at Zach Bove and our pitching crew and Brian Bannister and what we've been able to do with some arms. Jordan Hicks comes to mind. I know, in the offseason, acquiring Jordan Hicks on the surface, perhaps that deal didn't make a whole lot of sense. Why did they do this? And truthfully, we saw that there was still plenty of talent in Jordan Hicks. Obviously, in that case, getting Sandlin as well, a deal like that, and being able to unlock Jordan Hicks and the impact that he's having right now too. Now, how does that apply here? We think that there's positive adjustments they're going to have, but even at its floor, just being able to provide these innings is going to be significant for the Chicago White Sox based on the current group that we have, which is a young starting group that really hasn't provided that whole, a lot of innings. And we've got to protect the bullpen as well. The bullpen's done a really nice job, but the quickest way of taxing a bullpen is asking them to do too much and cover starter innings as well. So that was part of the calculus as well.
So what's next for the Chicago White Sox before the trade deadline? Well, it really sounds like from Chris Getz that he'd like to add another catcher.
We're staying in contact with clubs, and it seems that there are a handful of clubs that are out there looking for catching. So that's made the market maybe move a little bit slower than you would like. So we're going to continue to monitor the catching market. I anticipate we do something. I just don't know when and who's going to be coming our way.
After a word from our sponsors, we'll be recapping the action down in Tampa Bay with James Fegan, and also hear from White Sox manager Will Venable and starting pitcher Anthony Kay about their big series win, next on the Sox Machine podcast.
What if you can actually have it all? And I'm talking about Mint Mobile taking the premium wireless bouginess, Kratz, but then bringing it to the transparency in pricing and the affordability in pricing.
They're going to lay everything out there with a cheap bill that, everybody can handle right now.
You can even bring your current phone and your number if you're thinking about it and you're like, I'm worried about that. No worries. They have you covered because they're able to convert people all the time to the Mint Mobile way. Go to mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/territory. That's it. There's no catch. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required, $15 per month equivalent, taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Includes up to 20 gigabyte hotspot. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com.
Howard, my dad was T-boned by a utility vehicle and is in surgery now. What should I do?
I'm sorry to hear about that. It's really great that you're getting him the medical care and treatment that he needs right now. These are 3 important things that I think you need to know. Injuries are unexpected and turn lives upside down. I'm Howard Ankin, and I'm here to help. If you or a loved one have been hurt at work or in a car, truck, or rideshare accident, call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Ankin Law.
There is one place to be on trade deadline day. Watching Foul Territory, of course. AJ Przinsky, Eric Kratz, and Scott Braun will be live all afternoon, speaking with insiders, reading tea leaves, and reacting to unfolding deadline drama. Join us on the FT YouTube channel at 1 p.m. ET, and stay locked in through the 6 p.m. deadline next Monday. Foul Territory Network, it's baseball the way it should be covered.
Great overall performance by the team.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, a series where you give up 3 runs there. Offensively did a great job. Thought it was really cool today. CEP Pereira, who wasn't even in the lineup, and we made that late lineup change, and he went out and had a big day. It was really a difference for us. Yeah, everything. He had everything working. Did a really good job in hitters counts using the off-speed stuff, but really had everything working today. Obviously, really efficient there. I mean, it was first 4 innings. I think he was under 40 pitches or at 40 pitches, and just really efficient. Really good job by him. Really great to see, for a guy to work around some trouble there and really do a nice job.
The Rays seem to.
Yeah, all these games are important. Obviously throughout your season, every one of these games is going to be important, whether you're at home or on the road. Come down here in a tough place to play against the best team in the American League was really special.
This is a Rays team that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. You're kind of able to seize on them in the first inning. How do you feel like they kind of set the tone or put you guys in an advantage point for the rest of the day?
Yeah, it was huge. To get 2 runs early is obviously a nice way to start the game, and really because of those 2 errors, right? I mean, those were 2 tough plays for them, where obviously they're such a good defensive team that they usually make those, but good job by our guys to take advantage of it.
They can score. does a wild pitch, but was that a double steal attempt, or what was that play?
It wasn't a double steal, no. I think it was a read by Benny just to move up on a dirt ball. And yeah, we just did a nice job on the backside there, or on the front side, I should say, with Colson, and then Benny obviously continuing on to second base.
Yeah, it was good. Unfortunately, I walked a 9-hole hitter, which ended the day, but yeah, it was good to, go out there and get some length that, I've wanted to, all year. And, it was good to, just be able to be out there.
Just from a command standpoint, how satisfying was your performance here today?
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, continued from last week. I think last week, was really good, and kind of just continued with that.
I don't think you guys have to make any sort of statement. You're in first place by 3 games. There's 51 games left, so you're proving how good you are. But if there was a statement, you guys did that this weekend. I mean, how do you feel about what this team did this entire weekend against the team with the best record in the American League?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, anytime you can win a series, it's really good. And, taking 2 out of 4 from the Yankees and then 2 out of 3 from here, it's kind of, shows where we're at in the league.
You were able to get 2 cutters in on the hands of guys to get out of that 4th inning jam, but Will kind of described it as you have everything working. Like, do you feel like your full arsenal was kind of at your command today?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my go-to pitch is getting the cutter in on guys, and I think a lot of the success today led with that, and I think kind of showed getting the cutter in leads to being able to use the changeup a little bit more and using the four seam up a little bit. So I think just kind of when that thing's working, that's when I'm at my best.
Now joining me on the Sox Machine podcast is Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan, joining me from Tampa as he covered this weekend series for us down in Florida. And James, this is a bit of a shock. I don't think a lot of people who cover the White Sox, or even White Sox fans, were expecting the White Sox to roll into Tampa and win this series, but to do so convincingly, only holding the Rays to 3 runs. We'll talk about the pitching in a moment. But what's your instant reaction having watched these 3 games and what it means for the White Sox to go to Tampa and win this series?
Well, I mean, they allowed 3 runs all weekend. So I think the pitching obviously performed remarkably well and allowed them to, statistically look like they dominated the series, but certainly be in every game in a way like a Tampa offense that really great top 3. And then it's very like matchup and, glove first guys from there. But it's funny, we're talking about them upgrading the rotation and obviously, absorbing money to get Luis Castillo and, still being on the hunt for more starting pitching potentially. And they're the weakest links, had arguably their best outings of the season. Like Erick Fedde throws 5 innings of 1-run ball and gets demoted to the bullpen afterwards. And we're still wondering about Noah Schultz. Both because there's, he's at 88 innings. I think his career high is 88 in a third. That would make a consideration for, what the postseason picture is going to look like for him and his role regardless. But, talking about maybe upgrading from him because obviously his ERA is still in the 5s. And he looks as good as ever and kind of in a way where both with how he pitched and how he talks afterwards, kind of asserting like, hey, this is how I want to operate. We've kind of tinkered with a lot of iterations, but like, this is the way I want to work. East-West, sinker cutter and all that. Anthony Kay, arguably one of his best starts of the year, if not the best, because his career high 6 1/3 innings. He wasn't blowing people away necessarily, but like kind of like idyllic Anthony Kay outing of just like weak ground balls, very efficient, throwing strikes. Exactly what you watch him on film in Japan in the offseason and hope like, hey, come do that over here. So it's not the necessarily your game 1 or game 2 starter candidates in this series, and that's any given 3-game series you can kind of do well, and I certainly think with the way the White Sox have played consistently over the season, you wouldn't say put it past them to beat the Rays in a series. It's just that you felt like you were getting certainly 3 of the Rays' best starters, like seeing Rasmussen in there. That this was not the back of their rotation against the top of the Rays rotation in some sense, and for them to come out. But yeah, the offense clicked a couple games, and I feel like they maybe got to like the back end of the bullpen late a bit more Sunday, whereas like Friday was really where they kind of performed their best and showed the most power. I don't know why I'm blanking on Friday's starter for the
Nick
Rays.
Martinez,
all-star, ERA leader, and certainly someone who I was like wary, like this feels like supercharged Kiter Montero, of someone who's just going to like attack in the zone and they like always try to blitz people and try to like, have this thunderous contact and you see them pile up weak contact, and all of a sudden, like, the guy's into the 6th inning on 60 pitches. Whereas Martinez was really efficient, but they hit a bunch of home runs off of him. Basically,
Right.
like, you saw the game plan work. But really, I thought pitching was what really showed up. And it's kind of, interesting. Like, it's the guys you're thinking of booting out of the rotation. Sir Anthony Dominguez had a great inning in this series. Looked awesome. Struck out 2 guys. Possibly the best he's looked in a Sox uniform. It was a swan song. So it was obviously a great performance. Obviously, a lot of guys who are going to be here through the stretch run performing very well on this, but also like kind of some contributors that you kind of think they're planning around not counting on
Right.
performing well as well.
Well, taking a look at the American League Central standings, and the White Sox are 59 and 52 this season. They have a 3-game lead over the Cleveland Guardians. And that's significant because when you look at the American League East and American League West, the White Sox have the largest division lead in the American League right now. The Houston Astros have just absolutely caught on fire. They have taken over in the American League West. I don't think anyone can make sense of what's going on in that division. And the Yankees winning some games at Wrigley Field this week, and the White Sox doing them a favor and beating the Rays this weekend. They are within 3 games. So, yeah, the White Sox in the American League, James Fegan, have the largest division lead in the league, which is just really just fascinating right now of this particular season for the White Sox. But I did want to follow up as far as on the pitching side, because you make good points that like Erick Fedde's going to the bullpen and Noah Schultz had an opener. Jordan Hicks looked very efficient in that first inning. And then Anthony Kay, not only did Anthony Kay, I think, pitched well to contact, but Anthony Kay made some great defensive plays. I want to start with Noah Schultz because it was something that Schultz said post-game, James, that he has a good working relationship with Edgar Quero. And if you didn't get a chance, podcast listeners, to listen to our live reaction when the White Sox made the trade for Luis Castillo, you heard from Chris Getz in the earlier part of the show talking about in that he doesn't know who the next catcher is going to be that they acquire, but the plan is for the White Sox before the trade deadline tomorrow that they're going to add another catcher. With that relationship that Noah Schultz and the confidence that he has with Edgar Quero, does that help Edgar Quero keep his job, at least with the Major League roster? And are the White Sox looking to replace Drew Romo?
I would think no. Romo's been getting the majority of starts, and that continued through this series since they lost Teal. They're either splitting as they did the Yankee series, or Romo's doing 2 out of 3.
Okay.
So, and he's the superior framer, and that, like, push comes to shove, that's usually what they value. Especially like in a situation right now, like if Quero just like caught fire or just hit like he did last year, which he's showing signs of doing, but maybe not like huge games where it's just like, oh wow, like how do you take that guy out of the lineup? Then that alters it, of course. But we're talking about literally they're not playing another game before the end of the deadline, and the GM saying we're adding a catcher. I don't think that he really has the runway to alter the balance in that aspect, even if he thinks he's trending in the right direction offensively. And it certainly looked more like 2025 Edgar Quero. I think like Romo's kind of established as like the guy that, is framing more close to average at this point in his career. Not that Quero can't get there at some point, but like right now, and certainly you're talking about someone who, when they acquire a catcher, and certainly when Teal comes back, is shifting towards like a playing once a series role. You just as soon send I don't know if Quero's turned 23 yet, but the guy who you still feel like has some ceiling back to play regularly in AAA, I would think would imagine. What stuck out to me about Schultz's comment is he's like repeatedly asserting like the way I've had success with in the past. And he's obviously 22. There's not this huge major league track record, but what he's saying is like we've seen a lot of iterations. We've seen a lot of tinkering with what Schultz does, since he's been called up, and really like when they're trying to figure out what was wrong with the knee last year of like, what do we need to do to get the slider right? What do we need to emphasize the cutter? Do we need to throw more four seams to, respond to like the high contact rate of the sinker? And he has this great start. And obviously it works a bit with like a righty heavy lineup of what he's trying to do of like, I just want to work inside the sinker, throw the cutter off of that. And then I can pepper in changeups and maybe the occasional breaking ball. As much as like we talked about, like he's got to get the breaking ball right, coming back from injury. And, when he was struggling, he hasn't used it a ton the last couple starts. and you're seeing him kind of work hard stuff, try to pitch the contact, really not fret too much about like, oh, I got to get the bat missing breaking ball right, and just kind of be like pouring strikes in, getting ground outs the way that like he was when he was kind of overwhelming guys in the lower minors. And Schultz would be the first to tell you like this is way different than the lower minors. He kind of felt like I could get away with stuff just because my stuff was better than the hitters I was facing back then. Like this is a different beast. But I think he's kind of trying to assert the way he wants to pitch repeatedly. And Edgar, being someone who caught him in the minors and has experienced it, I think he's invoking like, this guy has that experience. He knows what I want. We're working well together. We just did what I want out there. So I like this partnership rather than like, I won't pitch to anyone but Edgar Quero type of like stand. I don't think he's making that at all. He certainly likes Edgar Quero. He certainly Quero's revered for like, you know, kind of the interpersonal part of like the pitcher catcher handling, like not to take anything away from how good he is at that. I just feel like it's a lot of like trying to put a stamp of like, this is the way I want to operate. This was good. I want to kind of build off this and kind of like, I think he's speaking up, like he's a quiet physical talker. I think his words kind of are pretty stern in the way he's talking post game of like asserting like, I think this works. I want to keep doing this. I know we've been tinkering around with different things and what needs to work. And there's probably going to be different lineups he faces that maybe require a little bit of something that they've tried with him a bit more than this lineup did. But that's how I read that comment, maybe more so than like, this is going to flip the balance of like the catching depth chart. You know, that's probably going to change if Chris Getz has his way.
Right.
Maybe by the time anyone's hearing this.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Again, podcast listeners, just the warning. I have to work incredibly fast to get these episodes out. So they are still timely, just in case if we do have breaking news. We're always keeping an eye on Twitter to see if anything does hit up, or as far as text messages or email. So if any breaking news does happen on the recording, it'll be a very raw and live reaction from James and I during this segment. Erick Fedde moving to the bullpen. How is this going to look, James? Is he piggybacking behind starters? Is he the emergency guy if a starter just doesn't have it or they get knocked out in the third inning? What's the plan here with Fedde?
Will Venable didn't want to commit like, hey, this is like some structure we're going to use. Like they'd like to keep him stretched out. They'd like to work on multiple innings. It's hard to like have a scheduled 4-inning outing for your relievers.
Right.
That's just, especially in 2026 baseball, it's all about like trying to find matchups and, you know, attacking pockets where you can. I think it's a bit like, it's too soon to say. He's not used to working like back-to-back days in any sort of way to like compare him to like 2025 Vassell, maybe like a right-handed version of what like Schweitzer's doing, where like there's opportunities to work multiple innings. I think like Fedde's, you know, kind of more proven against righties in a way where it wouldn't necessarily be like as exclusively low leverage as it tends to be with like the other like eighth man, the bullpen long guys they have. But certainly like it's more length oriented. It's certainly like, we know this guy works better against righties. We're going to try to keep him stretched out, but I don't think like they really are coming out of the gate promising like, hey, this is going to be the certain structure of what it's going to be. I'd be surprised if he's like pitching the eighth of a 1-run game.
Yeah, me too.
Later this week. That said, like Fedde sweeper is really effective. He's run up to 95 at times this season when he's airing it out. I don't think he couldn't be a good leverage reliever. I just think it's probably going to take a little bit of time and feeling out to really see what he's going to do in a significant way. And, you know, the nature of the beast is like someone can go down and Fedde's just right back in the rotation again at some point. They want to kind of keep him at the ready for that to some degree. It might depend on how things go in the next 24 hours. They're clearly still trying to get pitching, whether that's certainly sounds like from what they have internally, when you have Hagen Smith, when you have Tanner McDougal in the bullpen or, you know, working to be in the bullpen AAA, maybe there's a bit less of like, oh my God, we need a proven setup man to add to this mix, as much as like what we really don't have immediate like proven options in AAA is like someone who can take starts. And so you certainly would imagine with what they're trying to avoid with prospect usage, though he did, you know, leave the door open of like, hey, if we can get a starter with control, maybe we would trade someone who's like top 100 prospect caliber type dude. I'd be a little surprised with the way rental prices are. Like it would have to be like someone pretty studly, I think, to make sense for what they've tried to say about their long-term picture. But like, they're certainly trying to add. I think they'd love to come out of this next 24 hours with a starter in some form. So
another
you kind of have to
starter.
hang loose on, yeah, you kind of have to hang loose on what it looks like for anyone who's like moving around.
Well, James, to your point, like the Toronto Blue Jays just picked up off waivers Jamison Taillon, who was DFA'd by the Cubs. That tells me, that indicates that the Blue Jays are getting ready to position themselves to trade Kevin Gausman. And I know you mentioned, I think that'd be a great addition for the White Sox. But a lot of teams would love to have Kevin Gausman for the last couple of months. I feel like even as a rental, you would have to offer quite a bit to win that bidding war, I imagine.
Right, but what gets kind of pushed the brake on is like, well, I'm not going to trade prospect capital for a rental in some major way. Now, we just saw him. Luis Castillo is obviously struggling, but in terms of like, and obviously a big part of what they did this trade was like absorbing salary. Maybe they do that again in some form. It seems like there's not necessarily like, yeah, they have full reign to just absorb salary with abandon, but I think he can maybe with something lesser than what they just did, he could run up that up the tree again. But is there a certain way to, one, find a prospect who's maybe intriguing? They talked about how Boston Smith was getting asked about, and at the same time kind of, I wouldn't say slagged him, but also said like this guy wasn't in the mix for 26 or 27. There's just too much development to really peg him as an option for corner outfield, or certainly like say he's ready to catch a major league game in a way that I thought was pretty pointed or at least like candid. But is there more ways to slide around value like that? And obviously you gave up Sir Anthony, who certainly looks like a distress asset to here, but also like very foreseeable that he helps a playoff Mariners team down the road. Like he has that ability. It's more the Mariners that are questioned than probably Sir Anthony at this point.
Yeah.
Are there still resources on their roster to do that in a way that compels other teams? I don't know.
Well, we're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors, but when we come back, we'll talk more about the White Sox shocking the Rays and winning this series by taking a look at the White Sox offense. And we also have some insight when Luis Castillo will make his White Sox debut next on the Sox Machine podcast.
Hey, for the families out there looking for a new path to help your child succeed, take a look at K-12 powered schools. K-12 offers tuition-free, accredited online public education for students in kindergarten through 12th grade, all in a setting that works for your family. And they've been a leader in online education for over 25 years, serving over 3 million families. And Todd, Father, you've raved about the homeschooling experience.
Hey, if you're a busy family, K-12 is where it's at. I've had a couple of my children who've been homeschooled. It's a fantastic opportunity for them not only to get better in school, but timely fashion too, and make some new friends. K-12 has every opportunity to make your child better and smarter as they move forward in their academic career.
See how K-12 powered schools can help unlock your child's full potential. Enroll online today at k12.com/FOUL. That's the letter K, the number 12.com/FOUL, K12.com/FOUL.
Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast as we continue the conversation of the White Sox winning this series against the Tampa Bay Rays. And on the offensive side, I wonder if this is a preview to the path the White Sox can find in postseason success, because we know that ball go far, team go far in the postseason. And in these 3 games, the White Sox scored 15 runs. They got shut out on Saturday, so they scored 15 runs in their 2 wins over the weekend. They had 22 hits, 7 home runs, and 3 doubles. So almost half of the base hits the White Sox had against the Rays this weekend went for extra bases. But I look at that 7 home run total, James, and I think for those around the American League that are still not familiar with the Chicago White Sox, I think it's easy to look at team stats and be even surprised. Maybe others outside of Chicago are just as surprised when looking at the American League standings and still seeing the White Sox in first place. They're one of the best home run hitting teams in Major League Baseball. And you saw it on Friday. Murakami, Colson Montgomery, and Miguel Vargas all hit home runs again in the same game. That's the 5th time this season. They do it again. That sets a new MLB record for a trio hitting a home run in the same game. Was this weekend kind of the blueprint the White Sox may have to follow? I can't believe I'm saying this. When the postseason comes around, if they are going to make a run and be this dark horse that could surprise even more people in the American League?
Yes and no. Like, their home run power is established. I think it can be the way that they win a game or two in a series. I think like, especially like what we've seen in their offense in the second half, they're not going to have the game that they hit 4 home runs in the game every time, or even like necessarily 4 out of 7. I think that the fact that they have this ability to, like, we just went off, we hit 3-4 homers, and we took the game away and ran with it. That's still a unique ability for them to do it like once or twice in a playoff series. It's just not something they can do on command. Like, I can't imagine they get through a whole postseason and they win the World Series just because like they just homered their way to victory, like a majority of the games in a playoff series, like round after round after round. Maybe that'd be amazing. Like, I'd love to watch it. I don't think it's quite been like they run into arms that are able to defend them or make them win in different ways. And that's why they're like, as much as like they've clearly defined their identity more and more around slug as the season wore on, they are the ones that tell you, like, we've got to have adjustability in our swing. We got to be able to like back the ball up, hit the opposite field, win like the situation is, like when it's not there. Like, just talking to like Colson, it's always a confusion to like record a podcast for the next day and then try to remember when I had a conversation Saturday talking to Colson about like in a situation, like he was like Ryan Fuller was talking about him in the week and said like Colson, he's a power hitter. He swings with loft. When he misses, he's probably going to be swinging under fastballs. And I was talking to Colson, like, when you're in a situation, when you're in this league now where everyone's throwing 3 fastball shapes, you know, how do you kind of like, you know, it's natural for you to go through periods where maybe you're swinging under balls a little bit and you have to recalibrate. But how do you kind of recalibrate in a world where like everyone's throwing 3 fastball shapes? And it's like, well, you got to kind of just pick one. Like, you're not going to be able to cover all 3. If you gear your approach around like adjusting to all 3, like, you can't do it. You're not like going to be up there and you're going to be like realizing mid-flight, like, oh, this isn't a 4-seam, it's a sinker, and adjust your swing. That's not how anything works. That's a thought you have while walking back to the dugout. So like, I kind of have to really prioritize and commit to like jumping on the one I'm looking for when I see it. And, you know, we're at the end of this conversation about us talking about swing planes and fastball shapes. You can probably pick out which one I'm good at. And that's probably the one I'm really going to commit to most of the time. And there's going to be ups and downs. What I really want to do is like commit to my plan. Like, results will come. Sometimes the results aren't there. I want to stay committed and like maximize my opportunities to really jump on balls that fit my swing. But like, the nature of what he's saying is like, sometimes they're just not going to throw him his pitch. He's getting changed. Like, he's talking about like, every time I feel like I got it nailed down, I start seeing a new way of people pitching me, and I got to kind of learn and adjust to that, which is kind of like why he can seem frustrated in the game or on the field, and you see him throw his bat or be like, why did I do that? But then you talk to him post game, and he's just like very zen about it all. It's like, I discovered kind of a new way I'm getting attacked. I'm going to try to have to learn this now. So yeah, I think there's going to be games. You know, this series is perfectly represented. There was one game in the series where they just like hit a bunch of homers. And again, like I obviously Sunday, like you saw it at the end, but like that was so much about like they got a lead and then they got the secondary bullpen pieces. They jumped and they capitalized on some errors to get 2-0. You know, Benintendi had like probably the best swings of anyone on the team this weekend. Like, he had 1 homer on Sunday. You know, obviously had 1 homer on Friday too. He hit the crap out of 2 other balls on Sunday. He had authoritative swings all weekend. We were like going gaga about like, oh, it's the 5th time that you, Vargas, and Murakami have all homered in the same game. And Colson was like, Benintendi homer too. Do you guys notice that? So don't sleep on him a little bit. But like, they can have this game where like, oh, they just overpower it. But like, there was 2 other games, one where they get shut out and the other one where they have to kind of scrap their way to get runs until they break it open late. I think that's probably more representative of what a playoff series looks for them. Sure, like, will they have like a 3-game sweep where like they, you know, maybe hop on a couple of vulnerable starters and like they win the series on home runs, maybe that'd be awesome. That would, of course, be the first playoff series in 15 years. So I can't poo-poo like, oh, they won one series off of homers, but they couldn't win the World Series off of it. But like, that's a tool in their bag. Is what the 4-minute journey to making that point I'm trying to make is like, that's a tool in their bag. It's not like the model. That's how they can win. I think they have to win in multiple ways, is what everyone with the White Sox hitting group would tell you, is that certain games that's not there and you have to scrap in different ways and be ready to do that on a moment's notice.
Yeah, to James's point, Benintendi hit 2 home runs this weekend, almost a third against old friend Craig Kimbrell. Miguel Vargas had 2 homers this weekend. Murakami, Montgomery, and Everson Pereira really turned it on late on Sunday to make that a rout for the White Sox. So it had everything. Home runs, excellent starting pitching. The bullpen was nails to only limit the Rays to just 1 run in each game. Just fantastic work by the White Sox as they shock the Rays and win a really big series as they continue this gauntlet. You can look at it a couple of ways. The White Sox went 1-4 in a 5-game stretch against the Astros and Yankees, but now they've gone 4-1 in their last 5 games against the Yankees and Rays. So feeling good for the White Sox as they now have the off day during the trade deadline and they head to Boston. Tomorrow, Jim Margulis and I will have a more in-depth conversation about that series, but James does have some news as far as the pitching probables between the White Sox and the Red Sox this week from Tuesday through Thursday. And this will feature the debut of Luis Castillo. So, James, what's the plan for the White Sox with Luis Castillo? When can White Sox fans see him make his first start with the team?
Thursday, he will pitch the series finale of the Boston series. Davis Martin and Sean Burke leading into that homecoming for Sean Burke. I'm sure he'll be amped much more than a certain park that will not be named that he was slagging openly in the clubhouse to my great amusement.
Well, it'll be fun to see what Castillo could do on Thursday. That is a Thursday night game. And since our live stream worked out so well during the Luis Castillo trade news, there could be a chance we'll do another live stream to recap what happened between the White Sox and Red Sox before the White Sox come home for a critical series against the Cleveland Guardians. So big week, big week for the Chicago White Sox, especially for their chances of holding off their rivals in the Central. And the Guardians Twins can't still count out the Tigers, even though they traded away Tarek Schoolbull. We'll be recapping that trade and other news when it comes in on Monday. But thank you guys so much for listening to this edition of the Sox Machine Podcast. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also watch the show. This is a video podcast now. You can watch our videos on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, since now we are going to reintroduce live streaming. You'll be notified if you subscribe to the Sox Machine YouTube channel when there are breaking news and when we are going live to report on that news. And you can join us to get the latest and be part of the conversation. Again, our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Sox Machine. Of course, follow us on social media. Monday is going to be very busy around Major League Baseball. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at Sox Machine_Josh. And if you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball, you can sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at soxmachine.com/products. We're still running our sale in which your first month of the subscription is just 53 cents. After that, it's $5 a month, and that unlocks all access to Sox Machine, the comment section as well, and the ad-free version of the website. So if you are interested, go to soxmachine.com/products and sign up today. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of soxmachine.com. You're in for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Foul Territory Network. Alongside James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for watching and listening.